Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Did you hear the news? There's a big war. You heard about the war? And the Chashmonam won. And in honor of that, Rabbi Nachum Fuchs is sponsoring today's breakfast. In honor of the victory of the Chashmonam. Welcome everyone. I wanted to read to you a few simple halachos in the Rambam on Hilchos Chanukah and share with you a number of observations that are found in the Sefer Harei Kedem from Rav Shurkin, citing Rav Soloveitchik. These are halachas we're all familiar with, but if we dig a little deeper, we'll uncover a number of gems. The Bayis Sheni in the Second Temple era, Kishamalche Yavan Gazu Gzeres al Yisrael, when the kings of the Greek kings decreed various decrees on Israel, Bitlu Dasam, they abolished religion. They did not allow them to engage in learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Now, we're very familiar that Chanukah we celebrate spiritually because they try to abolish religion. But look what the Rambam says. Upashtu yadam b'mamayinam. They stretched their hands into our pockets. Interesting. So it wasn't only religious persecution, it was also financial persecution. Ubib'noiseyem. They violated our daughters. V'nichnesu laheichal. They entered the sanctuary. Upartsu by paratzos. And they made breaches. V'timu hataharos. And they contaminated all purity. So it's interesting. The Yevanim entered the sanctuary, they breached it, and they contaminated it. Many people, in order to never forget what the Yevanim did by defiling the sanctuary, like to follow in their path by continuing to violate the sanctuary. Let's say they talk by davening, or they bring their phone into a shul. So they are very following, they never want to forget what the Yevanim did. They always want to commemorate the Yevanim who defiled the sanctuary. They were metame, they contaminated all the oil. So a way to do that today is, let's say you enter the shul, you bring in your phone, you talk to your friend. This way, we'll never forget what the Yevanim did. Okay. Now it's interesting, one point to make on the Rambam is the Rambam seems to emphasize not only religious persecution, but also financial persecution and physical persecution. This, Rav Soloveitchik says, is not like the Levush. The Levush says Chanukah, because it was spiritual persecution, we celebrate holiest. But the Rambam seems to be saying there is what to celebrate physically. Okay. Vitzar lohem li Yisrael ma'oid mipneim. They distressed, Israel was greatly distressed because of them. That also requires analysis. Why is the Rambam adding that Israel was distressed greatly from before them? V'lachatzum lachatz gadol, and they oppressed them with a great oppression. Ad sharichem aleim elekei aveseinu, until the God of our forefathers had mercy on them. V'hoshia miyadam, and He saved them from their hands. V'hitzilam, and He rescued them. Another thing we need to point out is the Rambam is not a storybook. The Rambam is a halachic code of law. Why is the Rambam telling us the story of Chanukah? Who asked the Rambam to tell us a story? This is not a medrash. The Rambam doesn't cite midrashim. The Rambam doesn't tell us the story of Pesach or the story of Purim. Why does the Rambam need to tell us the story of Chanukah? We'll discuss that as well. The Gavru b'nei Chashmonai, and the children of Chashmonai prevailed. HaKohanim Agdolim, the high priest. V'hargum, they killed the Greeks. V'hoshia yisom yadam, and they saved Israel. V'he'emidoi melech min HaKohanim, they appointed a king from the Kohanim. Why does the Rambam seem to say this is a good thing? The Ramban says this was a great sin. The Rambam seems to hold it was not a sin. It was a positive thing. Why is it a positive thing that they appointed a king from the Kohanim? V'chazra malchus li Yisrael yesar masayim shanim, and sovereignty returned to Israel for more than 200 years. Okay, who cares? Well, how is that relevant to, why is the aftermath of a 200-year Jewish reign relevant to the Yom Tov of Chanukah? Ad hachurban hasheni, until the second destruction. Okay? So we asked a number of questions. Number one, why is the Rambam telling us the story of Chanukah? He's not a storybook. Why does the Rambam add that there was financial persecution? Why does the Rambam add that we were very distressed? Why does the Rambam add they appointed a king from the Kohanim? How does that enhance the Chanukah story? Why does the Rambam say they restored Malchus to Yisrael for more than 200 years? Halacha beis. Gavru Yisrael aleivim, when the Jewish people prevailed over their enemies, ve'ibdum, and they destroyed them, b'chav hei b'kislev haya. It was the 25th of Kislev. V'nichnasu l'heichal, they entered the sanctuary, v'lai matzu shemen tar b'mikdash, they didn't find any pure oil, ela pach echad, only one jug, v'lai hoibay l'hadik el yom echad, there's only enough to last for one day. They were able to light the neiros for 8 days, ad shekatshu zeisim, until they were able to crush more olives, v'hoitzioi shemen tahar, and produce pure olive oil. The Ran says that why did it have to burn an extra 7 days? Because it takes 3 days to get to the share of Asher. Asher's land was 3 days away. It takes a day to make the oil, 3 days to come back, so they needed it to burn for an additional 7 days. Because of this, Hiskinu Chachamim Shaba'osei Hadar, the rabbis of that generation enacted, Shayu Shmainas Yamim Ha'elu, that these 8 days, Shetchilasan Chafhei B'Kislev, that begin on the 25th day of Kislev, Yemei Simcha, days of happiness. What? Well, now the Rambam is making something up. Days of happiness? Since when are Yemei Chanukah days of happiness? You eat meat on Chanukah? They're not days. The Gemara says, Lefikach, B'shana ha'acheres, kavam va'asa'um, yamim toivim, b'halel v'hoida. Halel and hoida. What do you mean you made simcha? I thought the Levush says we celebrate spiritually. And the Rambam says simcha. Simcha is physical happiness. Where does that come from? V'halel. And we recite Hallel. We recite Hallel. Umadlikin bohem haneros be'erev al pischei abatim. What do you mean umadlikin and we light candles? The Rambam should say they enacted days of simcha, Hallel, v'hadlakas neiros, and the lighting of candles. Why does the Rambam say? Matter of fact, by the way, we light candles. What, we don't have to? The Rambam is reporting that we do that, but we don't have to. Al pischei abatim, at the entrance of the houses, b'chalayla v'layla, every night, mishmenas haleilos, on the 8 nights, laharois, to show, ulagalois hanes, and to reveal the miracle. V'yamim elu, these days, hein hanikraim Chanukah, they're called Chanukah. V'hein asurin behesped, they are prohibited to eulogize, v'tainis, and to fast, kimei apurim. Question, did the Rambam say that we light candles on Chanukah? He already said that. Look what he says now. V'hadlakas haneros bahen, lighting candles on Chanukah, mitzvah midivrei soifrim, is a mitzvah midrabanan, kikriyas ha-Megillah. Like reading the Megillah. Rambam, you already told us we light candles. Why is the Rambam saying it again? So why is it the first time he didn't say they enacted a holiday to light candles? All the Rambam says is, he reports, we light candles. And then the Rambam goes back and refers specifically to that mitzvah, and he says lighting candles is mitzvah midrabanan like Kriyas HaMegillah. Well, he doesn't say Hallel is a mitzvah midrabanan like the Megillah. And you know what the biggest question of all is? The Rambam left something out. The Gemara says, what's Chanukah? Kavam v'asam yamim tovim b'halel v'hoida. V'hoida. Did the Rambam say we do hoida on Chanukah? No. So what, the Rambam has a thankless Chanukah? In the world of the Rambam, we don't thank Hashem? By the way, Rashi on the Gemara, when Rashi says halal v'hoida, Rashi says hoida al hanisim. Do you see in the Rambam that you say Ala Nisim on Chanukah? Nope. So we asked many questions on the Rambam. Many good questions. Why does the Rambam tell us the story of Chanukah? Why does the Rambam say that they took away our money and violated our daughters? Why does the Rambam say they distressed us greatly? Why does the Rambam say they appointed a king from the Kaihanim? Why does the Rambam say that they returned sovereignty to Israel for more than 200 years? Why does the Rambam not say that they enacted Chanukah to light the menorah? He just reports they did light the menorah. Why does the Rambam omit thanking Hashem? Why does the Rambam repeat the mitzvah of Hadlakas Haneros twice? 8 questions on the Rambam. That's a good one, right? 8 questions. That's a good title for a shir. We could market that one. 8 questions of the Rambam for Chanukah. So Rabbi Mammon is getting nervous because he's from the Rambam and he's not going to take this. So we have to answer all the questions on the Rambam. So Rav Soloveitchik begins as follows. Why the Rambam tells us the story of Chanukah? Very simply, because when we light the Ner Chanukah, we're not just performing a mitzvah, we're accomplishing Persumei Nisa. We're spreading the miracle. Yeah? We're broadcasting the miracle. If you don't know what the miracle of Chanukah is, you can't broadcast it. Say, no, I'm lighting the candle. Pal, you don't know what happened. If you don't know what happened, your Hadlakas Hamenorah is meaningless. You see, you could shake a lulav and esrog. You don't need to know anything. You could just shake it. God said to shake it, so shake it. But if the purpose of lighting the menorah is to be mefarseim a miracle, you must know what the miracle is. If you don't know what the miracle is, then your Hadlakas HaMenorah is empty. Well, so you'll say that the Rambam didn't tell us the story of Purim. That's because the Rambam wrote something called Mishnah Torah. What's Mishnah Torah? The Rambam writes, together with Torah Shebechsav and the Mishnah Torah, you have everything you need to know. So the Rambam didn't have to tell us the story of Purim, because he understands that we have the background of the Torah Shebechsav, and now the Rambam is just adding Torah Shebal Peh, but it doesn't record the story of Chanukah and Torah Shebechsav. Therefore, halachically, the Rambam must record the story of Chanukah. Otherwise, we wouldn't be yotzei the mitzvah of Hadlakas HaMenorah. Rav Soloveitchik says that the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Megillah says that Kriyas HaMegillah mitzvahs aseh v'hadvarim yeduim shehi takanas hanavim. What does the Rambam mean, hadvarim yeduim? He means Megillas Esther. If you know the Torah Shebechsav and you have the background of the story of Purim from Megillas Esther, then that will fill in the missing information of how you're mefarseim the miracle of Purim. But we don't know the story of Chanukah, so the Rambam has to record it. Okay, that's point number 1. Point number 2. The Rambam says, "V'tsar lohem li Yisrael ma'od." They distressed us greatly. They distressed us greatly. Why is that relevant? Why is it relevant that they distressed us? The Rambam said they abolished the religion, they didn't let us learn Torah, they took away our money and our daughters. Why does the Rambam have to say they distressed us greatly? You ready for this? The Gemara says in Psachim on Daf Kuf Yud Zayin regarding the mitzvah of Hallel, that the Nevi'im were mesakein Hallel for Klal Yisrael, al kol perek u perek, for every chapter in our history. V'al kol tzara v'tzara, and for every distress, shaloi tovei aleim, that it shouldn't come to us. Uchshenigolim, when we were redeemed, oimim oisai agulas, and we would say Hallel for our redemption. The Gemara emphasizes that in order to recite Hallel, there needs to be a distress, and when we're redeemed from the distress, we could say Hallel. So therefore, says Rav Soloveitchik, the Rambam emphasizes, V'tsar lohem li Yisrael ma'od, they distressed us greatly, in order to explain how we could have a recitation of Hallel. Since on Chanukah we have to recite Hallel, therefore, the Rambam has to say that we were distressed, because in order to say Hallel, we need to be saved from distress. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'dvarai. Okay, so that's why the Rambam emphasizes they distressed us greatly. Rav Soloveitchik adds that the Rambam in Hilchos Melachim says, what's a Melchemes mitzvah? Is a Melchemes mitzvah only against the Zayin Amamim? Is a Melchemes mitzvah only against Amalek? The Rambam says there are three categories of Melchemes mitzvah. A war against the 7 nations, a war against Amalek, the Ezras Yisrael Miyad Tsar, helping Jews from distress is a Melchemes mitzvah. So the Rambam emphasizes that we were in distress to teach that the war of the Chashmonaim was not a regular war, it was a Melchemes mitzvah. Therefore the Rambam says, V'tsar lahem li Yisrael me'oid, they distressed us greatly. Friends, Chanukah parties, Sudas mitzvah or Sudas rishus? It's a big machlokes Rishonim. Many Rishonim say Sudas Rishus, because Chanukah is only enacted lahodos lahalal. It's a Sudas Rishus. You want to eat jelly donuts? That's your prerogative. You want to imbibe 1,000 calories on one round circle? That's up to you. However, other Rishonim say it's a Sudas mitzvah. What does the Rambam hold? Now, why would it be a Sudas mitzvah? They only tried to persecute us religiously. They didn't try to persecute us physically. But if you look carefully in the Rambam says not only did they make decrees and they abolished the religion and they didn't allow us to learn Torah, but they tried to take away our money. They tried to take away our money. I would suggest maybe the Inyan of Chanukah Geld, because since the Yevanim tried to take away our money, you gotta restore the money. You have to give Jews money, Pashtu yadim b'mamayna. Uve b'noiseyem. So says Rav Soloveitchik, the Rambam who learns not like the Levush that it was only religious persecution, the Rambam learns it was physical persecution. Therefore the Rambam says, what's Chanukah? Look in Halacha Gimel. The Rambam says Chanukah is not only Hallel, not only Madlika Neiros, Yemei Simcha. Chanukah are days of joy. According to the Rambam, maybe Chanukah parties are Sudas Mitzvah. Would you have to wash?
Then you can say Al Hanisim, right? If you just done it, you can say Al.
You could bench Goimel. But would you have to wash according to the Rambam? If it's Yimei Simcha, would you have to eat meat? Would you have to eat meat? People have milchak parties. Not my family. We have fleishik. It's Yimei Simcha.
Why all 8?
Also because people are allergic to milk, but that's a different story.
Why all 8 days would be Yimei Simcha? The Chayr should only be the first day. If it was because of the Milchama.
Yeah, they enacted 8 days. You mean the 8 days are really for the Neiros?
Right.
No, you can say only 1 day is the Milchama.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So the first day should only be the Simcha. The other 7 days shouldn't be.
Should be like the Lavush.
Right.
So wasn't the mace done through milk also?
Could be, but if it's Yimei Simcha, then ain't Simcha. Yeah.
Like the
Shavuos, you gotta eat meat.
milk too.
You could add the, yeah. Okay, so it's a very nice diuk. The Rambam is going to Shitase. The Rambam who learns that it wasn't just religious persecution, it was also physical, learns that Chanukah is Yimei Simcha. Okay, then we pointed out, the Rambam says they appointed a king from the Kohanim. Of what relevance is it that they appointed a king from the Kohanim? The first observation we meant is the Ramban learns the fact that they appointed a king from the Kohanim was this terrible sin. They violated the ethical will of Yaakov Avinu, who said, Lo Yasser Shem Yehuda. That's why the Ramban says all the Chashmonaim were wiped out. But the Rambam seems to learn it was a positive thing that they appointed a king from the Kohanim. By the way, the Abarbanel and the Ran say the Chashmonaim did absolutely nothing wrong by taking the king. Lo Yasser Shem Yehuda just means Torah leadership leadership rests in the hands of Shevet Yehuda, and even in the times of Chashmonaim, the Torah leader Jewish people came from Yehuda. Moreover, Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen says the Chashmonaim were never wiped out. The Gemara of Baba Basra says that she jumped off the roof and she said, anyone who says she's from the Chashmonaim is a liar, I'm the last one, and I'm jumping off the roof. That's what she said, because all the other Chashmonaim were in hiding, but they were never wiped out, Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen says. So the question is, what's the Maila that they appointed a Melech from the Kohanim? Says the Rambam, says Rav Soloveitchik, there's a mitzvah of Shmiras HaMikdash. It's a mitzvah. It's mentioned, I believe, in Parshas Kairach. There's a mitzvah on the Kohanim to guard the Mikdash. So you would have, let's say, 2 Kohanim, bodyguards, bouncers at the Mikdash. They would feel your belt. They would feel your pocket. And if you had a device, they would take it away from you. You couldn't go in with that. You also, if you were tamei, you couldn't go in. Or if you came in with your money belt or your shoes. And you couldn't slip it in between your belt and your pants. You couldn't have like a micro. No. You couldn't come in with that. There's a mitzvah of Shmiras HaMikdash. The Yevanim tried to be mechalel the Mikdash. Therefore, the fact that they appointed a melech from the Kohanim ensured Shmiras Kedushas HaMikdash. That was part of the Simcha of Chanukah. That they appointed a melech from the Kohanim to counteract the fact that the Yevanim were Mechalel Kedushas HaMikdash, and now that the Kohanim were Melachim, they had power to control the sanctity of the Beis HaMikdash. Now this is my favorite. Okay, you ready for my favorite? Why in the world does the Rambam say they restored Malchus to Klal Yisrael for more than 200 years? How is that relevant to the story of Chanukah? That the 200-year aftermath of Chanukah is relevant to the miracle of Chanukah? That Malchus was restored to Klal Yisrael for 200 years? That's not relevant to Chanukah. Who cares? And let's say Malchus wasn't restored. Let's say just we got back religious freedom. Then we wouldn't have Chanukah? Understand, the Yevanim tried to take away our religion. They didn't let us learn Torah. They didn't let us do bris milah. We'll wish a mazel tov to Reb Chaim Kasdan, who made a bris milah today. Shimshon Doiv ben Chaim. What's the name? Shimshon Doiv. Yeah? HaKohen. So they let us do bris milah. And now we could, we're back to work, right? The Beis HaMikdash is open for operations. But if we wouldn't have a king, we couldn't have Chanukah? Why does the Rambam throw that in? Says Reb Soloveitchik, Mamish Go'inus. I heard this from other Mekaymis also. Others suggest this also. The Gemara Megillah says, why don't we say Halal on Purim? Different answers. One of the answers is, we say Halalu Avdei Hashem. In order to say Hallel, you have to be only a servant of Hashem and not a servant of anybody else. The Gemara says on Purim we couldn't say Hallel. Why? Akati Avdei Achashverosh Hanan. We were still Avodim to Achashverosh. So the Rambam's bothered. If we were still Avodim to Achashverosh in times of Purim, and therefore we don't say Hallel on Purim, how could we say Hallel on Chanukah? Akati Avdei Antiochus Hanan. How could you say Hallel on Chanukah? We're still subject to the Yevanim. Therefore the Rambam says, no. They restored sovereignty to Israel for 200 years. We're no longer Avodim to Antiochus. So you could be Goymer Hallel. That's why the Rambam said that Malchus was restored to Klal Yisrael for 200 years. Otherwise, how could we say Hallel? Akati Avdei Achashverosh Hanan. Goyness. Rav Shurkin asks, but wait a second. The Rambam personally, when he discusses why we don't say Hallel on Purim, doesn't give that reason why we don't say Hallel on Purim. The Rambam says we don't say Hallel on Purim. Why? Kriyasa Zuhi Helela. The reading of the Megillah is the recitation of Hallel. So the Rambam doesn't hold of the reason of Akati Avdei Achashverosh Hanan. So don't say the Rambam said they restored Malchus, because otherwise how can we say Hallel? Because that's not the reason the Rambam says by Hilchos Purim we don't say Hallel. And he ends off with the Tzarchian on the Rambam. I would humbly suggest, no. I would say, of course the Rambam holds of the Gemara's reason that on Purim, of course the Rambam holds that if we're an Eved to another king, we couldn't say Hallel. So why didn't the Rambam say we're still slaves of Achashverosh? Because since Esther was the queen, that's not called being slaves to Achashverosh. Not that the Rambam doesn't hold fundamentally that if we're slaves to a foreign king, we could say Hallel anyway. No, the Rambam agrees to that fundamental logic. We can't be slaves to another king. But maybe the Rambam didn't bring that answer to the Gemara, not because he doesn't hold of it fundamentally, but because if Mordechai is second in command and Esther's the queen, that's not really called being subservient to Achashverosh. If he's letting us build the Beis HaMikdash, and we have Esther in power, and we have Mordechai in power, and Mordechai Yatzav Bnei HaMelech B'Levush Malchus, and Mordechai was praving a king, and the Medrash says Mordechai was minting coins, and Mordechai was given license to attack Amalek. That's not called Akati Avdei Achashverosh Anan. However, in times of the Yevanim, had we not made our own king, we would be subservient to the Yevanim. Maybe. Okay, you ready for the biggest whopper of all? Why does the Rambam say Umadlikin Bahen Haneros? It's like the Rambam says, by the way, they made Chanukah, what do? You have to rejoice. You have to say Hallel. And people light candles. What, you don't have to light the menorah? And then the Rambam afterwards repeats that the lighting of the menorah is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Why does he only repeat the mitzvah of Adlakas Neiros? And Hallel's not d'Rabbanan? Comes Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna. You ready for this? He was one of the Polish Gaonim. My grandfather's grandfather was a Talmud of Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna. He said that in the aftermath of Chanukah, they did not make a mitzvah to light the menorah. There's no mitzvah to light the menorah. There's no such mitzvah. There's only a mitzvah to say Hallel and to eat meat. There's no mitzvah to light the menorah. I said, what? But so what does the Rambam mean? Umadlikin bohen haneros. He's just reporting people lit candles to remember. What? But doesn't the Gemara talk about the mitzvah of lighting the menorah? It came later as a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. What? They didn't say you have to light the menorah right away? Of course not. Why would you light a menorah? There's a Beis HaMikdash standing. There's a menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. The miracle happened in the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. You think the Chachamim are going to be masakin that every Jew should light a menorah in his window? Why? There's a menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. What, you should make an aron and a shulchan in your house also? It would be absurd to legislate that Jews have to light a menorah. The Beis HaMikdash was standing. There was a menorah lit in the Beis HaMikdash. After 200 years, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the Rabbanon came along and they said, now that the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, you need to light the menorah in your window. So the Rambam, when he first speaks about Chanukah, he just says, Umadlikin b'hen haneros. People did it. Report. People did it. Then the Rambam says, nowadays, hadlakas haneros is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, but it was not part of the original legislation of Chanukah. That's Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna. That is not, I don't want to say it's not the simple reading of the Rambam, it is the simple reading of the Rambam. It is not unanimously maintained that that's how you read this Rambam. It is the literal reading of the Rambam. It is the simple reading of the Rambam.
That also answers why he says that the Chachamim L'Yisrael Yasser Al Misayim Shanim.
Why?
To tell you that they weren't so that they weren't misaking Minai right away, because there was a Beis Hamikdash and we had Malchus, so there was no need to light the Minai.
Yeah, if you would have said the Beis Hamikdash stood for 200 years, the emphasis on the Malchus, maybe he's explaining. He's explaining how their ability to enact lasted for this long. Okay, so you're going to ask.
About the number of how do you do the candle lighting? So weren't they during the time of the Beis Hamikdash?
So Menachem Yishai is asking. We have Machloikis Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. How you light the menorah? Do you go up or do you go down? And they were around in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. So what were they arguing about if they were around in the times of the Beis HaMikdash? When did Hillel live? Kisha Hillel Allah mi Bavel. He took over the Bnei B'Seira, and the Gemara Pesachim says that they were makrev. Hillel said you could be makrev the carbon Pesach on the Erev Pesach, holiest b'Shabbos. That means the Beis HaMikdash was standing. So what was the machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? The answer is Hillel and Shammai never argued. Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai argued. That was their academy after the Beis HaMikdash, you would have to say. You would have to say that the Beis Hillel, it's like Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Even though if you look, can you bring a Gemara Shabbos? Does the Gemara there bring Hillel and Shammai themselves? I have to take a look. Maybe you'd have to say that, according to him. But it's not typically maintained that they were not masakin right away. Thank you. Let's see. What does the Gemara say? All the Gemara says is Amar Rabbi Bar Chana Rabbi Yochanan Shnei Zakenim Hayu B'Tzidan Echad Asa Kebeis Shammai Echad Asa Kedivrei Beis Hillel.
Do we ever have in Gemara Shammai versus Hillel?
Yeah.
Oh, we do.
We do.
So the tool is basically Hillel versus Beis.
No, we do have. Let's say about preparing for Shabbos. Let's say you have a nice piece of meat in the store. Do you put it away for Shabbos? Or you use it right away and you hope you'll get something better for Shabbos? That was Shammai and Hillel themselves. Okay, so how would you read the Rambam according to the traditional view that they were originally Masake in the Ner Chanukah? Remember we asked another question on the Rambam? We asked on the Rambam forgot something very important. The Rambam left out. The Gemara says, Lefikach kavim v'asam yamim tavim behalel v'hoida. And the Rambam didn't say anything about hoida. And I'm going to ask you now the biggest question you ever heard in your life, or at least in the last 3 minutes. The question of the Mizrahi. The Mizrahi asked, the Gemara says, Lefika l'shana acheres kavam v'asam yamim toivim b'halel v'hoida. What about the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah? What about the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah? So Rishula Mikuna says, see, that's the proof they were Masake Ner Chanukah. But according to the traditional view that they were Masake Ner Chanukah, why didn't the Gemara say Ner Chanukah? So basically, we have a question on the Gemara. The Gemara didn't say Ner Chanukah, and we have a question on the Rambam. The Rambam left out thanking Hashem. So says Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, says Reb Tzal Zolti, must be. The Gemara is telling you the purpose of the mitzvah, and the Rambam is telling you the act of the mitzvah. There's one mitzvah. The mitzvah is to light the menorah, and the purpose of the lighting is to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, now this is very important. The reason why the Gemara didn't say Ner Chanukah is the Gemara said, Haida, gratitude. The mitzvah is having gratitude to Hashem. The Rambam didn't say gratitude because the Rambam said how you express the gratitude. How? Umadlikin b'hananeiros. Or if you look in the Sefer and the Rishon, Piskei Riaz, it's a Rishon who codifies the Gemara, Umoidim al hanes behadlakas hamenoira. You thank Hashem by lighting the menorah. It comes out, and we spoke about this last night, it comes out, lighting the menorah is different than any other mitzvah in the Torah. Every other mitzvah is lulav. The mitzvah is shake lulav. So go, pick it up. Of course, you're going to have kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah. You pick it up, you shake it. You did it. I didn't think this, der hoibin thought, I didn't have that thought, it doesn't matter. I did, the mitzvah is shaking it. I put on the tefillin. So as long as I had kavanah to mekayim the mitzvah, and I had kavanah, let's say, Laman tia Taras Hashem beficha, I did the mitzvah. There's no mitzvah to light the menorah. There's no mitzvah. If you go home, and at the exact time you light the menorah, you didn't do anything. There's no mitzvah to light the menorah. The mitzvah is Haida. The mitzvah is gratitude. So how do I express gratitude? Do I make a sign, Happy Chanukah? Do I write Hashem a thank you card? How do I express gratitude? By lighting the menorah. And what if I light the menorah and I don't think this is my expression of gratitude? Says Rav Shlomo Zalman, Chasar ha'ikar, you missed the main part. Rabbi Tzal Jolti says, Lo yatsa. Lo yatsa. You're not yotzei the mitzvah. That's why we say, Haneres halalu, sha'anachnu madlikim al hanisan neflois, kidei lahaydais. What other mitzvah do we explain why we do it? Now, if you're not aware of what you're saying in the Al Hanisim, also, you didn't do anything.
So how does that fit with the Rambam? According to the Rambam, they should have been misaking to light
So again,
right away.
No, this is a different approach. Rabbi Shula Mikutna says the reason why the Rambam left out halakas hamenorah is, Rabbi Shula Mikutna says the reason why the Gemara left out halakas hamenorah is because they were never masaking it to begin with. And that's why the Rambam just says, umadlikin, they light. People did it. It was the practice to do it. Actually, I once heard Rav Hershel Schachter said over Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna, and he dismissed it based on the fact that they found menorahs that date back to when the Beis Hamikdash stood. So I showed him inside in Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna that's why Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna says, "Umadlikin b'hen haneros." They weren't obligated to, but they did. They did. He told me that he heard Rav Soloveitchik would always say over Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna. So I had the zchus to buy him the set of the Chidushim of Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna. And he addresses this question. He says, "Umadlikin b'hen haneros." They did, not, you don't have to, but that's Rabbi Shmuel Mikutna. But the traditional view is they were masakin right away, going with the view that they're masakin right away. Now, if they were masakin right away, why didn't the Gemara say madlikin haneros? The Gemara did. The Gemara said hoida. Why didn't the Rambam say hoida? The Rambam did. Madlikin haneros. Says Rav Shlomo Zalman, it comes out, we know that if somebody is not going to be home the first night of Chanukah, what do? They look at someone else's neiros and they make the bracha sha'asa nisim. However, if they didn't think, but he says, they would still be lacking the main fulfillment of the mitzvah, which is thanking Hashem. So in other words, Rav Soloveitchik says, now, do mitzvahs d'Rabbanan need kavana or do not need kavana? In the Shabbos Shuvah Drasha, we spoke out the Mishabur Paskins, they do. Pri Megadim Paskins, they do. Magen Avram says, mitzvahs Rabbanan do not need kavana. However, since the purpose of Ner Chanukah is to thank Hashem, even ordinarily, mitzvahs Rabbanan do not need kavana, possibly according to Magen Avram. For this, you for sure would need kavana, because if you don't have kavana, you're not doing anything. So it comes out,
Kavana l'haidos.
you have kavana l'haidos. Yeah, right. In other words, correct. Right. Yeah. Right. L'chayra, according to that. So just to conclude, the Gemara says that anyone who haraga b'ner, anyone who's careful to light ner Chanukah, will have banim tamidei chachamim. And there's a famous question. Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahar says, everyone lights the ner menorah, but not everybody is zoicha. But according to what we're learning, we see that there's a very critical way to light the menorah, that if you don't have that additional thought, you could be missing the main part of the mitzvah. And that is, you see from the fact that the Gemara left out halakas hamenorah and the Rambam left out hoida, the two complement each other. You light the menorah as an expression of gratitude, and if you do that, then the Gemara promises haragil b'ner, Havyin le banim tamidei chachamim. Shkoyach, have a good day, everyone.